afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally for the Legal Mix the Cultural. We're here with you every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, joined by our two legal experts, Russell Esquire and Edward Esquire. My name is Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, and I have the pleasure of being the producer of this wonderful production every single week. We have so much to talk about. We always do, and we appreciate you being a part of the show, tuning in, offering your commentary, and letting us know how this has been helpful for you to navigate all of the things that we are witnessing. So today, we have a lineup of two hot topics, but before we get into those hot topics, we always give our co-host a chance to say hello. So we'll start with Señor Pichardo. ¿Cómo está?
Muy bien, muy bien. Hello, audience. Hello, everyone. Hello to my two co-hosts. I agree. This is going to be an amazing program today. The topics here are going to be of much discussion and of much interest to the audience, we believe. So, hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, y bienvenidos a todos.
Bien, gracias. And over to you, Senor Russell.
Black men are in the news all day, every day, and today is no exception. And we're going to talk about the black men in the news today. A lot to be said and a lot of headway. All positive. Some of it leaves you with a little question mark. I'm not going to say I told you so, but let's just say we told you so. And so let's get to the gettings.
Yes, as we know, we spent a considerable amount of time talking about ranked choice voting when there was a very hot and heavy race in the city. And, everybody's looking at New York City and wanting to know what's going on with this ranked choice voting and what that means. And we saw as we went through in the show that the race isn't completely decided because they just started the second round of this ranked choice. So
excuse me, what does that article read? New York City mayoral
race in disarray after Board of Election withdraws results due to test ballot screw up.
Ain't that something?
That about?
Ain't that something, boy? Ain't that something? And what let's jump right in. Right, you don't need any real introduction. We're talking about Eric Adams in the lead, knocking folks out left and right. Everybody projects him to be the winner. Then as time goes on, and Ed is going to say, oh, this normally happens. You got the write-ins, you got the boot-ins, you got the sign-ins, you got the people that will put their vote on the train that's going by on the 2 and the 5. You got the people that put their vote in the text message. Some put it on Facebook. Another person had it in his back pocket. He slipped it in. He's going to tell you about all these things that normally happen, Royce Russell. These things normally happen. This is no exception to the rule. The dude that said, I vote for Garcia and sprayed it on the 5 train, we count that too. For those who don't know, this, New York City was known for having graffiti on the trains. And if you live in the metropolitan area, maybe like Chicago, you'll see where people spray and tag. And so I am making a joke on this is one of the ways people are voting, because it seemed like hook but crook with this, but not blaming this. But definitely there's a gray cloud as if we're all playing in Charlie Brown and we're all Linus, you know what I mean? Or we need our blanket with this ranked choice voting. And Ed knows that I know that Dr. Grant knows that the world is about to know is that a whole lot of folks said, oh yeah, we voting for Chang or Yang or whatever, Andrew, we voting for him, but we're going to put our second choice, Catherine Garcia. And by default, what is happening?
Well, listen. As a fan of
one
Peanuts,
person, one vote. Now it's one person, 5 votes. Like, you know what I mean?
Listen, as a fan of Peanuts, for those who know the story, what ended up happening was Linus was in a hurry and left his blanket behind.
Yeah.
And in this case right here, this is a case of hasty decision making. The Board of Elections should have never decided to release these results ahead of time before completing the count of absentee ballots. What we were told was after election night was that there was still voting that needed to take place before they could assess whether or not the 50% threshold had been reached. And then in combination with that, then we start doing the ranked choice balloting count elimination process. In this case, what they did was they jumped ahead. They tried to come out with the ranked choice ballot count in lieu of the still ongoing absentee ballot count. They made a mistake and counted in what are called test ballots. Apparently, those images of those test ballots were still in the system. Apparently, these are ballots that were used to, make sure that the process was working as designed. This was a case of human error. Those who were in charge of this made a mistake and did not eliminate these test ballots. What ended up happening, of course, is now. All I'm saying is that
you saying a lot.
I don't think.
You saying a lot.
Listen, I don't think this is an incident that should cause people to all of a sudden write off ranked choice. And by the way, as many have said, this isn't the first time that the New York City Board of Elections is screwed up. Even before ranked choice. In 2016, they straight up removed several people from the voter rolls. Had nothing to do with ranked choice. After that, in 2018, people had to wait hours in line to vote because it ain't properly staffed. There's also been stories about them not taking funds to improve their process from New York City government.
I think Ed, you could be an advocate of ranked choice voting. I'm not saying that ranked choice voting is the devil. What I am saying is that the first time in history we have multiple African American folks.
It's not the first time. We've had multiple candidates of color for the office.
African Americans. We got 3 African American. Now you could say color, right? We can spread it out. I'm being particular. You could take what you make your point or your point. I'm saying 3 African Americans running for this one seat.
No, it was more than 3. Remember, Paperboy loved Prince.
Okay, boy, that's right. That's right. And Lewis Wright and Isaac Wright. Excuse me. That's right. Isaac Wright Jr. So we had 4 to 5 running. 4 to 5 running. And now we test trying something that we only tried on a very local, like small level. And now we got all these problems. Now, I'm not saying one is correlated to the other. What I am saying is that if you try, look, every time I go to the DA's office and there's a wrongful death case and I'm saying, look, you need to indict, you need to do something. And they go in there and they go and half-ass indict. Everybody's not of color. There's no diversity. There's no nothing. And then they come back and say, Mr. Russell, we didn't get an indictment. There's something wrong with that. There's something to be said about that. And so now, whether they put out the report before and they shouldn't have put out this report and they read the thing off of this and it was a test over here. I don't know the last time we've had these issues.
Listen, what it was that all I was trying to say is, and I said this to folks right after election night. In fact, a few days ago, I explained to a very good friend of mine. I said, listen, Eric Adams is the front runner, but we have to wait and see what's going to happen with the ranked choice because he didn't reach 50%. And we also got to see what's going on with these absentee ballots. So hold on, not so fast. And, folks were like kind of okay, or they were like, wow, Ed, really? We got to, I said, yeah, because, we're not sure who voted for Adams as their number 2 or Maya Wiley or Captain Garcia or one of the other candidates.
That's the point.
But it's democracy.
Hold on for a second. Let me just shout out.
It was democracy before then.
Wait, hold on. Before we can,
you say now is more democracy.
Mr. Russell, I just want to acknowledge that we have Rich Russell in the building. We have Mr. Thorburn in the building. Let's shout out our guests for being here. Y'all see my hands are full for this conversation.
And in about another 5 minutes, we're going to have Bill Cosby in the house too. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to log in. But in the meantime and in between time, I'm not, I hear what you're saying, Ed. You're saying that is a fuller democracy. There's a more a democracy now than it was yesterday. And what I'm saying, as Biggie says, more money, more problems. We got more problems.
More choices, more problems.
We got more. Yes,
more
we got more. We got more problems because if it was straight line, and I get it, but the thing is that straight line has always worked to our disadvantage. And I feel like there's some charlatan that's floating around somewhere and say, hey guys, whenever we did it the other way, one person, one vote, you guys always got jerked. So how about come and take some of this jerk chicken we got over here? It's quite spicy. We're going to allow you to do like, we're going to vote you 1, 2, 3, 4. You're not going to get jerked. You know, it reminds you of a guy, I'm not going to say his name. I grew up in St. Mary's Project. This guy, he used to come in, oh, I got this VCR for you. You would buy the VCR. He was always known for something. You would buy the VCR. You would set it up, and you know you got jerked. You can't even put the tape through. Something happened, and you're like, why do I fall for this all the time?
But wait a minute. If we got to be applying multiple an increase in choices to everything else in life, I guess you still got your black and white with your antennas. And I'm going to hold on to my cable TV.
We haven't done
I like them 100-something channels.
It wasn't multiple choice.
Boy.
Look, it wasn't multiple choice when it came down to the DA's office. It's not there. So you can't tell me that, I like to go to my cousin's house and watch cable. I like to go to my cousin's house and watch cable. Right, but if I keep on going to my cousin's house, he keep on telling me about this bill he has that keeps on increasing. I go back to my building and I'm watching my black and white. And I'm like, oh, shit ain't increasing.
Well, let's not talk about the DA's race because I feel there was an individual trying to dilute the vote in that one.
Well, I mean, but he had to work. He had to work long and hard to do it. He didn't have the help of the board of elections.
Looks like he didn't do it.
He didn't have the help of the board of elections. That's for sure.
He couldn't even get
Oh my goodness! Hey, John, thanks for joining the show.
You got me going. Look.
Let's get back to
wait, Dr. Grant. I just want to make it clear. Ed, I don't disagree with you. I think it is something that we should have. I just disagree with the fact that it got rolled out today, in this instant, at this time, in this hour, with insurrections, President 45, all the things we have seen with things going on. You want to do it today. It just it smells a little spicy to me. It just smells a little spicy.
Listen, we can talk about those things because, in fact, I believe that what's happening on the federal level is an indictment against this continued two-party system, and there not being a third and a fourth party to break up this monolithic, ideological, polarization that's taking place. Where if you aren't with one side, you got to be with the other, and you can't. Think a little differently and have your thoughts and your ideology reflected in the country's policies. I mean,
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. Everybody's ideas should be on the table, but at the end of the day, you got to make one choice, one vote, one person, make one choice. And when you start this half, I'm not going to use the word, but when you start the half and half, right? When you start the half and half, right?
And we're not talking your coffee, huh?
That's right. We're not right. When you start the half and half, you understand. I mean, like, you're not on the side of the street. We know what the deal is. And
the moral of the story.
What's the moral of the story besides you're not getting at it?
Is that there's an Amber Alert going on that is interrupted our show. I'm hearing some beeping, but the ranked choice voting by itself, people have their concerns, and we talked about it, etc. We were also concerned about the fact, here goes the Amber Alert coming on this. So we hope that whoever that child is, that they do find them. That's a serious alert. So the challenge with New York City right now is really understanding that this was a new system, to Mr. Russell's point, that was rolled out in a major election season. So it wasn't
Dr. Grant, let me just let you know that alert is just asking everybody to conserve energy during the heat wave.
Oh, I thought it was the Amber Alert. Okay.
So everybody can put their antennas down, at least as far as that is concerned. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So we have to conserve energy on the show too.
Yeah, well, we getting hot real quick.
Yes, so back to finishing my point.
What you going to do?
Oh Lord, now you singing too. What is happening to our show, everybody? John, Kevin, Richard, I need your help. So because it rolled out in such a major election season, and then to have this misstep by the Board of Elections is what's adding insult to injury. So while if that didn't happen, people would be able to give their perception on how this rolled out a lot different than hearing this, because every election now people are going to have something to say. Who knows how many candidates might have issue with how this rolled out. They want to know if there were some ballots that messed up their election, because some of these elections were really, really thin. And when they started doing the ranked choice, drop the bottom candidate and start getting the other votes applied to who was in first place, still there's some confusion there, and not everybody understands it. So that's the concern, because we don't want people to stop voting.
I think if I may,
another concern on top of that is that, I mean, we live in a space and time, and I understand with the 2 parties and the 3 parties, and I get all that, right? That's something separate. That's a different subject matter than how we're going to cast the vote, right? And so we're living in a time where you got people still believing that by some miraculous hook or crook, in August, Biden's going to have to step down because they found a way in which they could figure out that the votes were rigged and this, that, and the other. It is just too much. Like, somebody should have said, let's slow up. Let's do this over. Let's get the machine, whatever it is. Like, this is buffoonery, man. And the person that's running up to take the lead, who might overpass Eric Adams, where did she come from? What I mean, like, like, for real, like.
Well, listen, I think the important thing here is I don't think anybody can really say right now that there is any fraud taking place.
But that's how they get you, though. That's how they get you.
I think this is human error by a body that's been in need of reform for quite some time, even before this. The Board of Elections, if anything, should be the focus of this in terms of the reform that needs to take place. From what I understand, the way it's composed, once again, 2-party system. You have like one Republican representative for every Democrat, and depending on the administration that's in power, I mean, that stuff needs to stop. We need to start looking at maybe turning it into something that's more akin to a body of professionals that are independent of either party and strictly about the business of running good, proper, efficient elections, no matter who's in charge.
I mean, how does that happen?
It can happen if you do it the right way, like you have in other government offices. I think the integrity of the election is just such an important task that shouldn't be subject to, as Kevin Thorburn says, patronage. And I think this speaks to that. They didn't even want to accept additional funding from the mayor to help them with their job. I mean, it's, it speaks to that. It reeks of that. So,
to your point, if the system is falling down, right? So if the bridge is falling down, you don't add a new toll to back up traffic,
that
right?
Was London, bro.
I'm just saying, when the bridge is falling down, you don't add a new toll. You don't add another lane. You like, this bridge is falling down. We got to do some construction on it. And their way of doing construction, and I say they because I don't even know who they are, right? Their way of doing construction is that we're going to have this new methodology, which really doesn't get to the crux of what you're saying. It's just a new method that they can mess up even more. Right.
Listen, the people voted for ranked choice, and I heard a lot of people out there even complaining that they wanted ranked choice for the DA's race, but were unable to because it was a state office. So, I mean, I really think that at the end of the day, there's enough support for this system that it's gonna continue to last unless there continue to be some major problems. But I don't think that the problem that occurred, these last couple of days was necessarily an indictment of that process itself. I think it's more so the Board of Elections, and once we smooth out the crooked places on this thing, I think it's going to work out just fine.
And to your point that one day it will work out. I don't know when that one day is, but I will tell you something. No. We are all people of color. We can't always with a fine tooth comb
tell
the court, this is what is happening to me that caused me to believe this is what's going on. It's happening to you. You living in the world, it exists. That's why they call it glass ceiling, invisible ceiling. These things are going on, and we can't point exactly to. So now we can't point exactly to this thing, but you feel like somebody's in your back pocket. At least I feel like somebody's in my back pocket.
Well, it's happening across the board. Look at this razor thin situation dealing with Brad Lander. This is interesting that Corey Johnson, as they're saying, is within reach after these unofficial tallies and the outstanding absentee ballots. Things are tightening.
But I mean, he's a city council speaker, though. I mean, he's a very popular individual. He was going to run for mayor and pulled out of the race. So his significant showing in this race really should be of no surprise to anyone. He is a recognized name in this city, and it shouldn't be a surprise that possibly some people said, you know what, I'm gonna vote for this first. I'm gonna rank this candidate first, but I like Corey Johnson. I'm gonna make him my second.
And this is, you got it. I mean, you're gonna make him your second. Now your second becomes the first. And Catherine Garcia, I don't like you, Ed. You probably didn't even. You may not admit this on air, right? But did you really know her before this thing? You knew a name. Who? What's the deal?
Well, it also depends on who you're talking about, right? Because
I
feel like I'm better informed than other people. But then again, we preach on this show. People have to be responsible for getting their information. I mean, we can't continue to rely on ABC, NBC, CBS, and whatever major organ out there to, tell us who we need to look at and who we don't need to look at. That's particularly the reason why the last show or the show before that, I said, you know what? Pull out your little booklet. Take a look at all of the candidates. Look at their, and we spent a significant part of our show,
and I tell you,
making sure that folks looked at these people's agendas and their programs and their policies so that they could make a wise choice. Sometimes the guy or the gal with the best ideas is not going to get the most press, and I think that's our particular problem. We rely on, and then we say, oh, we didn't know about this person, but hey, guess what? If you would have, opened up the laptop and hit them keys a little bit and started just asking simply, well, who's running for mayor, period. Mm-hmm. And look at the list and you say, wait a minute, I haven't heard this person in the news a whole lot, but let me check them out. Let me check her out and see what she's talking about. Maybe I like her. Maybe I like her ideas, At the end of the day, and this happens globally, we got the AP, we got United Press International, we got Reuters, and then we don't have anybody else really controlling media, getting media out there. People are getting killed in far off places across the land, and nobody hears about it until, NPR or somebody decides to talk about their suffering. People need to just, we need to be more aware.
Ed, I hear everything you say, and I hear it emphatically as you say it. Take that same, as they say, bring the smoke. Take that same smoke and ask yourself, was the smoke given on how to even do ranked choice voting? Was the smoke given like that? Was the smoke given like that?
Well, I think it was.
No, bro.
We may disagree, but I think it was. Like, for instance, I'm going to give you an example.
You believe the smoke was given out like that you knew? Oh, please.
Well, listen. Once again, to bolster my point, one of our giants that led to the decolonization of Southern Africa passed away about 2 weeks ago, and his name was barely in the news. His name was Kenneth Kaunda, a giant. He was a freedom fighter for what was formerly Northern Rhodesia, which eventually became Zambia. He fought against white rule in that country. This man was a giant. I think he died at the age of 87 or 90, more maybe older. This guy was, he was helping out Nelson Mandela when he was still in jail and fighting for freedom in South Africa. His name should have been all over the news, but it wasn't. I ended up finding out about it because, I regularly get news from the continent and from leftist circles, and it eventually, came to my view. And this is what I'm talking about. So, that's my piece on that.
I understand that you're talking about information. I understand it. Yeah. I understand. Here go the information. Another piece of information. A lot of our people don't know about 9/11 compensation board. If you have cancer, things that nature. But that's the world we live in. And now what we're going to do at the end of the day, quite frankly, and it might be a possibility, is have somebody in that mayor's seat that the majority of your people, my people, and everybody else is like, yo, bro, like, I know what I put down when I went in that room. I know what I put down. I went in that room. I know what I put. I didn't even put her third, fourth, or fifth, or sixth, or whatever. It was nowhere near. And look, I just think it's not a good time. Hey,
it's a big city, man. I mean,
yeah, all right. Well, okay, all right.
Well, I'm just pausing. I'm pausing for a moment so we can remember our ancestor and just share that he died at 97. I wanted to make sure we got his correct age, and it's we have to acknowledge those who've been in the fight and doing the fight for years for us. And you can go to Reuters for the article, but I wanted to pause. This is our commercial as we talk about this before we move into the next one.
When I speak to our ancestors tonight, I'm going to ask him, are you up for this ranked choice vote, and see what he has to say about it?
Okay.
Oh, boy. I tell you. Well, rest in peace, Ashe. To President Kaunda. All right. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, as you did bring, this is where the legal meets the cultural. And, he was, like you said, Mr. Pichardo, a giant in the movement and the example for, the fight for freedom in other African countries. Sometimes we forget our own history, that Africa is a continent and there are multiple countries within the continent that have history. And, that's a show for another day. And
when people are doing the work, and they're just doing the work. Now, I wouldn't say quietly, but there are people that are just doing the work. They are workers. That's what they do, right? No fanfare, no whatever. I mean, and we need more of those, right? We need more people that just doing the work, just doing the work, right? No one is sponsoring us. We're nowhere to be found on any large spectrum of the media. We're doing the work, and that's what it's all about, doing the work.
Absolutely. So back to this topic before we switch gears with another African-American man in the news. Jose said they should have just left the voting process as is. One candidate
Jose?
for each party after the primary. Too much confusion. And Maria said, yeah, it's hot in here, but she agrees with you, Mr. Russell. Not a good time for the rollout. So, we're definitely here to share opinion, also to get into the letter of the law when that's applicable. Right now, we don't know where everything is going to lie. They said the second week in July. And at this point, it's looking like by the time the dust settles on this election, it will be the second week in July, because somebody kicks off the month with their birthday on the 1st. And then before you know it, it's the second week in July. So
very easy.
Stay tuned. More about this. I just really pray that we don't have a complete debacle when everything settles for all these races, with individuals who might not be as equipped day one to be in these positions in one of the largest cities in the world.
I would just suggest that our community stay active, mentally sharp, and read the articles and read more articles and come in tune with what is going on, because if something happens that's not to your liking, if you, as Bush 2 said, if you fool me once, shame on me. You fool me twice, you never fool me again, or some old nonsense. He didn't even get it right. So let's get it right. You know what I mean? Let's Ridiculous out here.
Anyway, moving right along, you must have read our minds, Mr. Thorburn, because that is exactly the next piece of news that we're jumping into. You asked the question, we were already prepared with some commentary for Bill Cosby is now a free man after Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned sex assault conviction.
So now, Ed, with this piece, like, we need to take it real slow, right? Because it's multi levels, right? And we can almost do 3 or 4 shows on what this really proves, right? I think we're in a space and time, just in general, that influences are making its way through a lot of things. And I might be wrong, but I think I'm right. You know, you have death of George Floyd, you got wrongful deaths, you got the heightened awareness of heightened awareness of what it means to be African American in this country, hyper awareness of what fairness looked like, hyper awareness of what a world looks like to the left or to the right, given the antics that are going on as far as elections are concerned. So I think we're in a time and place. I'm gonna use the word hyper. I hope it sustains itself because it's where we should be: sensitive, culturally aware, want fair play across the board. Those are the things that we will want. And so here we are again in a situation that I think, to a small degree, there are some outside influences that made folks, let's look at this again, and let's look at this again, and let's see where we are with it. I'm not too sure. You take this same situation 5 years ago, 14 years ago, 10 years ago, anybody's blinking at the fact that Cosby was convicted. It would be a done deal. You never even, silence is a safe place in America. And I think breaking the silence and really digging deep is what we see here. And, you know, hats off, applause, whatever it is in reference to digging deep. Now, I don't want people to misunderstand me. I'm not condoning the act. I'm not saying that he was innocent. I'm not saying that he was guilty. I'm saying the wherewithal to dig deep, to look at what happened from a legal perspective, what has happened from a fairness perspective, to come to the resolution of overturning his conviction. And Ed, I'll let you lead off with, you know, some things about what were some of the factors that led to this decision.
Well, look, when I look at this case, you know, I think about August Wilson and fences. We call them balls and strikes, right? We call them balls and strikes here. So what we're going to talk about here is basically the facts and divorce ourselves from, you know, how we basically feel about what happened here. So what's happening here is the following. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court received an appeal from Cosby's lawyers, basically arguing that the transcripts of a deposition wherein he admitted to using quaaludes with the litigant in that case, and I guess several other women, that the deposition transcript of that case should never have been able to be used in his prosecution. Okay, now what deposition transcript am I talking about? Back in about, I believe it was 2005, a lawsuit was filed by a woman named Andrea Constand, saying that basically she was drugged and sexually assaulted by Mr. Cosby. Prior to the filing of that lawsuit, a criminal investigation had been done by the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office in Pennsylvania, wherein the district attorney at that time, Bruce Castor, declared in the media that he was declining to prosecute Cosby for those crimes, or for the crimes that were investigated, that he was investigated for, because he felt that there was insufficient evidence to be able to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. The mindset apparently at that time was so that the woman, the victim in that case, would be able to move forward with a lawsuit, be able to obtain testimony from him without him having to fear prosecution as a result of any statements given in that civil suit. Years later, another DA is in office, not Bruce Castor anymore, and that DA takes a second look at the case, a second look at those allegations and finds that there is sufficient evidence that a crime was committed. Now, there were other events that occurred in between that. For instance, Andrea Constand sued for the release of that deposition transcript, saying that Cosby, in declaring his innocence in the media, had violated the confidentiality agreement. Cosby's attorneys countersued, saying no, she violated the confidentiality agreement because she granted an interview, I believe, to the Toronto Sun in violation of the confidentiality agreement.
And that interview happened first.
Yeah. In any event, no matter what, either way, in 2015, I believe the trial judge in Cosby's case said, you know what, I'm allowing that evidence to come in and to be considered. He even heard testimony from that previous DA saying that he, in deciding not to prosecute, that he made an agreement with Cosby that he could not be prosecuted by any future prosecutor or DA for those charges. And so the trial.
Can we stop right there? Just
stop there. That's fine.
I mean, because that's a lot to chew on, and I want to go back and just kind of chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, just recap for the layperson.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're 100% on point. You and I read the same materials. I don't disagree with anything. It's black and white. It's on the paper. So let's start with number one. Number one is, and this is the cultural part, and culturally, how can an agreement like that and conversation happen like that and nothing is in writing and you don't safeguard it?
And normally in the Fed cases, they do it in writing, right?
Well, without a question. So now, culturally, as people of color, we believe that your word is good. As they say, your word is bond. Your word is bond, right? Your word is bond, right? Well, now in this case, he needed a bond to get out of his situation and couldn't afford a bond, right? I mean, like, stay in jail, right? So, one, I don't know how that is not written somewhere. I'm not going to throw shots, but that's a shot of malpractice somewhere, whether it goes in or not. Like, that should have been written. Now, someone says, hey, Royce, it was written. Yeah, well, shit. How did it get lost? And don't, I mean, like, you keep that. Like, there's a record of that. You keep it as is, right? And we'll get to the questions. You don't ever let that go. And you say, hey, look, this is what happened on this date. This is what this says. So culturally, if it's important, write it down, keep it. Oftentimes we have people come into our office and they want to switch attorneys. And we say, all right, where's your paperwork? Well, the attorney got it, or my cousin got it, or my brother have it. But as you said early on, be responsible for your own research. Be responsible for your actions. Every action is a reaction. Be responsible for that. All right. So now we'll put that on the shelf. That's the cultural part. That's the basis for why the Supreme Court said, you know what, we're going to overturn this because there was that agreement. Number two, I think there's a little sinister thing going on here where I think the DA's office tried to portray themselves as the good guy. Why do I say that? And what gives me my experience to say that? One is that, once again, seeking district attorneys' offices to file charges against police for misconduct, excessive force, and wrongful death. What they often do is that when they don't go forward in those matters, or when they decline to go forward in those matters, they try to become your friend and help you in your other litigation. That's noble. But where the lines get crossed is that in a case like this, where this individual decided that he's going to publicly announce and he's going to tell Cosby, look, or the victim, that we're not prosecuting at all. He'll never get prosecuted. Whatever his words were, you don't have to worry about. At the end of the day, his words meant you don't have to worry about your Fifth Amendment right, self-incrimination. That is not going to happen. We're not coming after you, so you can testify freely. I think giving that victim a bone or some sense of, well, look, you can still go after him criminally because he can't say, I'm not going to testify because I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Well, there's no prosecution. There's never going to be any prosecution. So you could talk all day and all night. So he did. And he said some things that were not to his benefit, right? And shame on him. If it was the truth, not the truth, whatever he said came back to bite him at the trial. right? Now at this trial, just on this issue right here, we're not even going to talk about the other issue that the Supreme Court talked about in reference to allowing 4 more or 5 more people to testify at this trial based upon the mistrial of the first one, where it was only this victim and the jurors could not come to a decision. So now the DA's office is going to open up the box a little further. We'll put that, we'll let you go through that part on the back end. So now they have this trial and everything comes in. That's not fair play. It's just not. It is unfair. Once again, this has nothing to do with him being guilty or innocent. It has to do with fair play. You can't tell someone that they will be immune from prosecution now and in the future, and then have someone come back and say, no, you know what Ed said, what Dr. Grant said, no, she was wrong. No, we're not living by that.
And by the way, you know, a lot of times clients will ask, is a verbal agreement enforceable? Aside from what we call the statute of frauds and any agreement beyond a year having to be in writing, I think one of the things that the court looked at here is whether or not Mr. Cosby relied upon the district attorney's promise of no prosecution at the time that the decision was made to, you know, participate in this deposition. And by the way, at first, based on the confidentiality agreement, non-disclosure agreement pursuant to the settlement, at one point, no one knew what the cash settlement was. Later on, it was revealed that she received $3.8 million as a settlement. That's the reported amount that civil case was settled for. So that's something to understand here.
And look,
So
if that agreement wasn't in place, he would have not participated in that deposition where he gave answers to very important questions that led to the resolution, i.e. the settlement. He would have went into that deposition and he'd said, I plead the fifth, because I don't know if the boogeyman is in behind door number 1.
Well, at the same time, though, we also talked about it being put in writing, because when you do a deal with the feds, normally DOJ puts it in writing, lays it all out.
With the state, not so fast, right?
No. I completely understand that. I'm just saying that that's normally where these take place. Now, when you talk about
let's answer Jose's question. So now is he exonerated on all charges, or does his conviction still stand on record?
No, his conviction is overturned. It's done. That's it. The conviction does not exist anymore. But exonerated, see, the terminology of exonerated, right? I mean, that's tricky, right? His conviction was overturned. That's what it was. People try to shortcut it and say he was exonerated. Yeah, he was exonerated, right? But then why was he exonerated? Was he exonerated because it turned out that the person lied in the past or lied about this incident? No, he was exonerated because of some other previous deal. So in most people's minds, he's still guilty. He's still a person that wears the cloak of guilt. I mean, for him, which is one of the things that's probably more practical, is that, look, if my conviction has been overturned, then I shouldn't have to register as a sex offender. Ain't nobody looking at that.
Now, the other little thing here is that I'm still, because this news just came out earlier today, that I'm still looking at, or, you know, kind of mulling over in my mind, because the United States Supreme Court still has the judicial power to weigh in on this, I believe. They have the power to review this state Supreme Court's decision in this case, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, whether they do or whether they don't, I mean, that's another day, another time. You know, I mean, that ain't stopping me from putting on my clothes and getting the hell out of out of prison. That's for sure. We can talk about that later. And look, how many times we laugh at it, but how many times we're on trial and the judge, and you say, Judge, look, we need to do an interlocutory appeal. We need to stop this right now, Judge, before we go to trial. And what did the judge say? Well, you can bring that up on appeal. We going forward. We can just on the back end. You go spend your time and you bring it up on the back end.
Somebody, Jose mentioned technicality. One man's technicality is another man's miscarriage of justice.
Without a question. Without a question.
And John said Hold on, let's just get John's comment in. I
Right.
shared it earlier. One must stand on the law no matter what side you are on and do the best one can do, win or lose. If the former agreement is true and legal, then Cosby wins.
And that is a fact.
Well,
And if you add on to that, release on former agreement. Well, we don't control that, Jay. I mean, I wish we could see that if it was in writing. I mean, what made this what made this a sticking point is not only was it said to Cosby privately, it was said in the public. It was made public, and that is just as good as any writing. And let me just add, when you talk about technicalities, we can go back as to when the case was a mistrial, and then the judge decided that he's going to allow other testimony from other women based on the argument that the prosecutor was putting forth, that this was modus operandi. This is how he did things. This is what he did. And we want to show a pattern in practice. And by having these other people come in, other victims come in and testify, we could show a pattern in practice, which would surely get a conviction. Because as I tell all my clients, you rob the first person, I can deal with that. You rob the second person, I can probably deal with that. You rob the third person, we creeping up on problems. The fourth person, bruh, like for real.
And just for educational purposes, I believe Mr. Russell's referring to, apparently the testimony during the deposition was that he basically said, yeah, I did this Quaalude thing I routinely did this with several women, and it was consensual. And so that kind of opened the door to those women's claims kind of falling out of that statute of limitations territory by him making this admission, is my understanding.
Well, going back to fairness again, anything that you allow in, and we're getting really technical, guys, but there is this rule called 404. It has to deal with credibility, has to do with prior bad acts, relevant conduct. And so anytime you have something like that, him mentioning something in the past, and the prosecutor and the judge decides that we're going to bring that in, there has to be a measuring tool as to whether or not is the information so prejudicial that it will automatically lead people to convict, versus whether it's probable, whether it is something that, it happened, but we can dig into, and it could be fair play in digging into it. And in this particular case, and in many cases that have to deal with domestic violence, child pornography, rape, it is highly charged set of charges, and bringing in 3 or 4 or 5 people to say that his conduct was similar, most of the time might be viewed as more prejudicial than probative, and hence cause a court to say, you know what, we need to overturn that.
Well, I just want to mention to the audience that, we saw something similar to this happen with an individual who has since deceased by the name of Jeff Epstein.
Yeah, right.
He had a non-prosecution agreement that was granted to him by federal prosecutors down in Florida. And the agreement there was, we're not going to prosecute you on the federal crimes, which then allowed him to enter a guilty plea to state prostitution charges, where he got a sentence of 13 months in jail, which apparently he was able to serve in many cases by being allowed to go to his office and do work. So later on, when other incidents came into play, and the feds decided to charge him up here in New York, they were trying to say, hey, listen, we got this non-prosecution agreement that was granted to us by the DOJ, down in Florida. At one point, a U.S. district judge said that agreement wasn't valid, that it violated the Victim Rights Act. And then the Circuit Court of Appeals, the 11th Circuit, overturned and said, no, it's a valid agreement. Victims' rights or not, doesn't apply, because he wasn't even charged with those Fed crimes. So it didn't even apply to this. Agreement stands. Non-prosecution agreement stands, rather. So, for those,
and the SDNY in the Southern District of New York had to come around with another theory and another way to get at him.
Exactly.
But now, in those particular cases, you're talking Florida versus New York. That's different states, right? But here we're talking Philadelphia within Philadelphia. So come on, we have to have some consistency.
And we're not talking about feds, by the way, like you pointed out
we're
earlier.
Talking about
we're
state.
talking strictly state court.
Right.
And by the way, there are several prosecutor commentators who were saying throughout this that no, this prosecutor's prior agreement with him, which was not in writing, should not have been binding on future prosecutors. Whether you agree on that or not, I just want to throw that out there. That
people take positions because they're in the media and the lights are shining, right? You know what I'm saying? We know this to be true. But I do want to make sure that we pin one thing out there, and we make sure that we understand this, is that Cosby's situation will affect Weinstein's situation. The director that was convicted not too long ago, Harvey Weinstein, right? So anything that happens along this spectrum of, if I can use it to help my appeal, you better believe I'm going to use it. And I can see Harvey Weinstein's attorneys right now digging deep to try to make some parallels to see if he can be released or his appeal has more credibility.
How would his appeal have more credibility if he didn't have the same situation with a previous agreement?
That's what lawyers do. Lawyers look, well, it may not be the agreement, but it might be how many women testify, right? To show a modus operandi, to show that was more prejudicial than probative. That's what he'll look into.
But I think the agreement issue will still come up because, let's be honest, there were several years that had gone by where Mr. Weinstein was allowed to skate, based on a number of verbal, agreements that were made between him and prosecutors saying, oh, there's not enough here. We're not going to charge you. We're not going to prosecute this. Don't worry about it. And then later on, times changed, and things got thick, and
this goes to time. You say times change. That's another word for saying movements happen, right? So Me Too, a variety of movements happen where women are standing up and society is looking at this in a different light. And so now you can't do what was probably the unthinkable before. You damn sure can't do it now. But I'm just saying movements create environments for people to weigh in differently. And just like this movement of George Floyd and things of that nature, I think weighed into some of this thinking. I will never know if it's true unless you have a one-on-one interview with some of the justices that looked at this, but movements will shape how people move and the decisions they make.
Yeah, and how we advise our clients. Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly. So this is interesting. Jose said this may open up Pandora's box. If that's the case, and John said on TV, the cops always lie to get a confession. So it's a lot to watch. But where the legal meets the cultural, this is about us really being in a position to understand what's happening, and whatever your feelings are about Cosby as a person, about what happened, how the law came into play for him to now be in this situation where folks are having their feelings about him being a free man. So thank you for explaining it from a legal perspective. And culturally, I don't know if he'll be, in a position to be celebrated again, because this is a lot that we saw him go through.
Dr. Grant, to the point of whether he'd be celebrated again, I could tell you what, TV hasn't moved an inch. You could turn on the TV set, you see Cosby is syndicated. It is on the air. You can, I won't name the station, but it's out there, and that's revenue and that's royalties. So unlike, and I'm not comparing it to, but unlike OJ, who might be destitute and broke and a whole bunch of things, these royalties and things that are happening on TV, this syndication,
he didn't get locked out of that.
No, that'll keep a lot of pudding coming through, if you understand what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
All right. On that note, we got to give you another one. Lord, you're on a roll today, Mr. Russell. So with that being said, tomorrow is a special day for one of our co-hosts. And thank you, Maria, for tuning in and getting the legal perspective from the show. So let's see if I can make this play to say a little happy birthday. So this is for Mr. Russell. Tomorrow's his birthday.
Here, Roy.
So, you know, I didn't do the hip hop version because we are.
Yeah, I was
in our
waiting. It's
old-
your birthday. We
Look,
gonna party
look.
like.
We're live on YouTube. We can't do that and do the replay of our show. We'll get booted off all the channels that we're on. So I had to do the calm one for your birthday. But happy birthday in advance. You know, we turn up for our birthdays on this show. So we wish you Godspeed and continued blessings on your birthday. Rolanda's saying happy birthday to you. John said live long and prosper. Maria said happy birthday. So the whole audience is giving you an early happy birthday. You'll be 1 year older when we meet again next week. There is a holiday happening also over the weekend. However you feel about Independence Day, you know, that's a whole nother conversation. But
Christmas Addicts Day.
Christmas Addicts Day.
Hey, look. I'm gonna say one more joke. Bill Cosby Day. He's like, yo, I'm out.
One more, Mr. Russell. Ay. Well, thank you all for tuning in and being here, being a part of the show, listening to our legal experts. We're not waiting for the networks to come to us. We're bringing the news to you where the legal meets the cultural. Thank you for being here every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Any final words, my co-host?
Yes, I wonder if Bill would decide to try to purchase a national television station again, because the word in the community was that the only reason why this came up and became this play was that he was going to do such because he thought it was time for us to own a station where our narrative can be told. It'll be interesting to see what the future holds, whether he does that or does not.
Well, listen, I think at this point, as we all advise another individual after his victory, lay low. Like they say in the hood, you need to lay low. You need to chill and let this pass because you got lucky.
And with that being said, we'll see you all next week.